Hello, here I am today to talk about 3D printing and a 3D printing maintenance issue which I feel is easily overlooked. Now, when I was getting into 3D printing about a year ago, and even after I got my printer, I looked online on how to make sure I can maintain it so that nothing breaks and I can always get the best prints as possible without having to fix things constantly that break. And this is something that was overlooked and I never really saw in any of my videos, and that problem is dust. Now, dust doesn't sound like a big problem, but over time, it can be, because, well, dust builds up over time. I noticed this was a problem for me at first after I left my 3D printer alone for about a month or two. Now, usually, yes, we get into the hobby, we can use it, and then we stop doing the hobby for a bit, and then we go back to it. But I turned on my printer, I did a test print, and the first thing I noticed was a burning smell. Okay? Wasn't pleasant, didn't really like it, and I'm like, why is that happening? So, went to my 3D printer and it's like, why is this happening? Is there something wrong with my hotbed? Is there something wrong with my hot end? Is there something wrong with my fans and it's not cooling? Is the pipe just getting burnt by the hot end because it's not getting cooled enough? And this is the things which first came to mind, because people who are into technology, we focus so much on the technology that we may forget to check simple things. So with 3D printing, focusing so much on test prints, getting the bed level, making sure my axes are working well, making sure I've got the correct PLA, messing around with the dial, making sure I've got the correct temperatures and testing which temperature is best. How do I stop stringing? How can I stop any problems? Do I need more support? I'm going from printer, computer, test print. I'm taking out my thing, I'm bringing it over there, okay? We do all these things that we don't focus on basic things. So for me, I eventually discovered it's dust. It's dust, okay? Very simple. It's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with this, nothing wrong with the parts, it's just dust. So I went in, cleaned out the dust, the smell stopped. For a little bit. I then started printing, and I noticed, as I was printing more away from the middle, where it wasn't printing previously, I was getting that burning smell again on the hotbed. And this is because there was a fine layer of dust on the hotbed, and as I was printing and the PLA hit the bed, it was then connecting with that high temperature and causing a burning smell again. So, what did I do? I took off my magnetic hot plate, I guess. What do we call it? Magnetic strip thing. And I gave it a wash and put it back. And then I printed it again. And I noticed the smell's gone. But not only that, my adhesion for my models connecting to the hotbed was much, much better. When you think about it, if there's a thin layer of debris and you want it to connect, anything in the way of that is going to make your adhesion worse. And it made me think, what else can dust be causing a problem for? So, let's have a look. If dust is in our fan, it's not going to cool as well, our filament can't get cool on time, can affect the quality of our print. If lots of dust gets in there around the hot end, it may heat up too much. Heat can't escape. We can have this little thing, the little heat sink, but if that's clogged up with dust, it's not going to work. So if that gets clogged up with dust, it can't get cooled well, that's then also going to damage our pipe quicker. What else can happen with dust? Well, as I said before, adhesion, more dust on the board, less adhesion. Our Z-axis screw, it is lubricated with oil. It is well oiled. Lots of dust, less lubrication. How our axes move along. We can get little bits of debris on here, which means it's not a completely smooth experience and may cause it to jut slightly. Although that tends to be less dust, and that's more debris from the wheels themselves, which you don't want that on your axes. Also, if you get dust on your filament itself, even if you clean the board, even if you make sure this is clean, as your filament goes in, you'll get that burning smell again. But also this time, you've got filament and burning together. So now your filament isn't going to be printing out as smoothly. Yeah, and pretty much all these issues, the same as well with like the power supply, where, you don't want your power supply to get too hot, you don't want to get clogged up with dust. So, all these issues. How can we solve it? If your printer gets covered in dust, how can you fix it? Nice and simple. clean it. What do I use to clean my printer? Usually, if it's something like I'm just cleaning the fans, compressed air, it's fine, a quick ch-ch. But if it's a bit more extreme, and also we've got quite a lot of mechanical parts here, I usually use this. It's a makeup brush. Go down to Primark or something, get a makeup brush, 50 pence, £1. I got a set of, for £1, I got 3 smaller makeup brushes and a big one. I use the other smaller ones for painting miniatures. Okay, I use little ones like this to clean and get in around all my edges and get the dust off. Okay, and that's great. And then with this, I take this off and I actually put this under a sink and I just wipe it down because it's a much larger surface area. Okay, so dust, if our printer gets dusty, we should clean it. Of course we should. But how can we prevent dust? That's a very important thing. And it can depend on your environment. Now, if you're in a workshop environment where you're doing things such as spray painting, airbrushing, sanding, you will have a lot more dust and debris in the air. You will have to be much more wary about dust. Of course you will. So let's talk about how we can prevent it. Oh, also, let me talk about my environment, because I need to be super cautious. In my environment, I've got pollution. I live in Beijing. There's a lot of pollution. I get more dust. Little particles of pollution. It's currently spring. Lots of pollen in the air. More dust. 3 weeks ago, there was a sandstorm. Ridiculous tiny particles. Even though my flat was clean, I had tons of little stuff the day after the storm. So, depending on your environment, you may have to do more maintenance than someone in a different environment. If it's in someone's bedroom, there may be less dust than if it's in your workshop, as I said prior. So, anyway, prevention. One of the easiest ways to prevent dust, an enclosure. Okay, if this is in an environment where the dust can't get to it, that's great. So if you're in a workshop, try and get yourself an enclosure or build yourself your own. Unfortunately, within my small flat, I don't have much room for an enclosure. So this, I don't know, I'd probably have to move it along and put something big here, and I don't have much space by itself, so I'm not going to do that. That's not that viable for me. What else could I do? Well, the next best thing, if I can't have an enclosure because it's too clunky, let's have a dust cover. Nice and simple. I'm not using my printer. Let's put a cover over it. The cover I use, nice, big, medical waste bag from a Chinese hospital. Don't ask me how I acquired it, but it's a good big size and easily goes over my printer. So look at this blue Pinter action. Okay. Now I usually put it the other way because that medical symbol doesn't look the most appealing, but it works. Okay. If I can't have an enclosure when I'm not printing, put a bag over it. I could get a nicer one, but that's for another day. Okay. So we can have an enclosure. We can have a bag. What else can we do? Well, there is another solution, and this is much more of a passive one. And that is an air purifier. Now, air purifiers are useful. They work in the background if you don't have much ventilation, especially if, for example, you're in an environment where you're sanding and airbrushing, you probably want lots of airflow. If you don't have airflow, you can use an air purifier. It'll take all those small particles out of the air so you don't breathe them. But also, it'll mean those small particles don't go onto your printer and don't go across the rest of your work area. So for me as well, with the pollution, generally the pollution is constant. So I'll run my air purifier and I'll take all those little particles out. If you're in a place that does have lots of dust anyway and not pollution, it'll still do the same job. So usually this is more something that you would run while you're working to take all those new debris from the air and, well, get them into the filter. But not everyone can necessarily do that, okay? So, anyway, those are my 3 easy steps. So, dust, bad for your printer. Make sure you're cleaning. Make sure you're not a slob. I know you can leave it for a while, but sometimes you may have issues with your printer that aren't down to the hardware, they aren't down to your software, they're not down to any of your printing settings, the temperature. It's not down to your PLA. It's because you haven't cleaned. And it's not like you're a slob. You can just leave things a little bit too long. things build up, and it's unexpected. And it's always not that easy to see, unless you actually put your finger down and you're like, oh yeah, that is a bit of dust. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope you can prevent dust in the future, and I can hope that you have a better printing experience. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked, feel free to comment. If you want to see more from me for some reason, subscribe. If you liked it, like it. Dislike it, dislike it. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Goodbye. I'm done.